Hi all, this is Maria Clark at Sweet Willow Designs and welcome to my studio. It has been so long since I've put out a tutorial and been able to paint. It's been over 5 months with some serious health issues in my family, and then of course we were all hit with the COVID-19 and have been all of us struggling through that to some degree or another. I hope you all are doing well. Please let me know in the comments. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. Today's tutorial is a sweet little 5-petal flower. This is just on a wood cutout that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I've prepped it with some black paint. I've done a couple coats. I needed to sand it a little bit to get it smoothed out. So I've done a couple of coats of paint. This little cutout is about 3 inches. The paint I'm going to use is Wild Orchid, Sapphire, Bright Orange, and Cad Yellow, and I'll be using my regular dotting tools. I'll be using my stencil guides, and I'll be using my Soline ceramic pencil, which I just love. So check those things out down in the description if you're interested. Now, because this is an odd shape, I'm going to give myself some additional guidelines on this. I don't have a stencil that's 5 segments, so I'm going to give myself a few little guidelines. So I'm just taking the ruler and going, blocking out those petals essentially, because they're going to give me a little bit of guidelines, right? So I'm going to be doing some swooshes, and I want to have some guidelines for how to end those. So this is a fun project because it's small, it's easy to get started. I'm a little rusty, so I'm having to get back not only into filming, but into painting as well. All right, so I've got the stencil down. I'm just kind of lining it up. I'll put my center mark down, and then I'll mark my little sections here. I'm not going to mark too much. I don't need it. It's a pretty small piece. But this will give me enough guideline that I can work with. And then I'll mark the center of each petal. I find that putting some guidelines down for me do help me keep a little bit more symmetrical and keep my design kind of flowing in the direction I want it to. All right, so I think we've got everything set up. I'm going to be using my K 10.5 6.5 millimeter crochet hook, the green one, and we'll go ahead and put our center dot of bright orange. And then I'm going to be using my largest nail dotter, and I will dot around the 8 segments of the stencil marks that I put down. This project won't take very long, actually. It's a really fun little project. I'm going to, I put some magnet holders up in my studio, and I'm going to be doing some few small pieces to kind of get myself back into painting, and just stick a magnet on the back of those and put those up on my magnet bars. Now I'm going in with a smaller nail dotter and the Wild Orchid and dropping just a little bit of that pink, that Wild Orchid color. It's kind of a fuchsia color in between those yellow dots. I love the color combination. I think that's really pretty. Now I'm ready to go in with my G6 4 millimeter and the Wild Orchid again, and I'll just give myself some larger dots here. See how I have just enough marking on here to keep me on the straight and narrow here with my placement. Now I'm going to place around here, and I had just put those markings from the stencil down, so I'm using the bright orange, and I'm just going to go ahead and go all the way around, and then I'll come in and fill in some of that space. Okay, that's looking good. Now I'm going in with the Sapphire, which is that blue color, and a slightly smaller dotting tool, and drop in a little bit of blue. Now I'm going in with the Wild Orchid and a smaller nail dotter, and I'll drop a little bit of paint in between those orange ones to fill in the space. Okay, that's looking good. Now I'm going to move to the outside, the petals, and I'm going to start working my way in. And I'm doing that because I'm kind of setting the boundaries again for myself, so that I know how much space I have on the inside of that each of those petals. So I'm taking my G6 4mm and I'm placing a large dot of the bright orange. And then I'm going in with a sort of medium nail daughter, and I'm going to again give myself some boundaries and put at the point of each one of those petals. Now, I always forget to put my smaller pieces on a card, or some of you use a Lazy Susan type. I do have some of those, so I'll start trying those out, but I don't want to get my hands in the paint, so I should put it on something. All right, now I'm going to go in with a nail daughter and start walking the dots and see how that's giving me, by putting the sort of guide marks down, it gives me, it helps me flow around that petal a little bit more and know when to stop. So I really, I think that's a good technique to get used to. And then I'll go on the other side, fill those in. Just tidy up some of those. And I'll let that dry. All right, now I'm going to come back and I'm going to do some swooshes. And here's where those little guide marks kind of help me, because I'm going to use a fairly small nail daughter, and I'm going to drag and swoosh those, or swipe those center pieces. And I'm just kind of putting a little accent in that arch. And I'll be putting 7 of these swooshes in the each one of those arch openings. And again, the reason I started in the center and then went to the outside is because I want to know how much space I have left, so that I can do a good job of finding the right size tool, because it was important to me to have the swooshes in there, and so I want to adjust any other tool sizes that I might need to. This is a good little practice project if you want to work on your swooshes. I definitely need to get back to working on those. And you'll notice I'm kind of flicking that swoosh a little bit to get the tapered end. You can work the technique that works best for you. Okay, now I can move back in towards the center part of this. And again, I'm using my K 10.5, 6.5 millimeter, same as the center dot. And I'm going in with the Sapphire and placing a dot at the bottom of each one of those arches. And I could have adjusted the tool any, up or down, depending on how much space I had left for myself. All right. Now I'm going to go back in to stay with the sapphire, and I'm going to drop another dot in between each of the one sapphire dots that I've already placed. Okay, and we'll just place those all around. Now sort of a medium-sized nail dotter, and I'll pick up some of that yellow, and I'll go in between each one of those sapphire dots. Okay, now I've let that dry. You can see I changed my lighting a little bit so it wasn't quite so blown out. I'm going to take a damp Q-tip and wipe off my marks, and then I will start top dotting. And this is where you can do whatever you like. You can introduce another color, you can stay with the same color scheme. This is such a small piece, I didn't necessarily want to add additional colors, so I'm dropping a bit of wild orchid on top of each one of those large sapphire dots. A little sapphire on the middle center yellow. A little bright orange on the wild orchid. And then I'll just put a little bit of sapphire on those yellow, or on those bright orange dots on the outside. And then on the center ones, the bottom centers of the petals. And I'll just keep layering colors, using a smaller size tool as I progress. One thing I want you to notice, I had on those top petals, on the orange dots center, I had put a little drop of yellow. I actually didn't like the way that looked, so in the end I went back and just left the blue dot, so I just dotted right over those again. And this is where, you just add as much or as little as you like. That's basically it. That's the design. Now I am going to let this dry, and then I'm going to come back with a matte varnish. And so here it is all dry. I have put one coat of the DuraClear matte varnish, and I'm going to just put another coat on, shake that gently, and then I'll just drop a few little drops on there. I don't use a whole lot. And then, use whatever finish you like. If you like the high gloss or satin, I prefer the matte. It does have a little bit of a sheen, and it's just a personal preference. And use a soft brush and get that on there. And you can see how it makes it pop. I just love watching that come to life like that. It's just so very pretty. And I do go over it, but I don't overwork it. I just kind of smooth it out so I can reduce the brush strokes. I had a little something on there. So let me get that off. And I'll brush that out. Okay, set that aside to dry. And that's the project. Real simple, huh? It's a way for me to get back into painting again. Here's a picture of the piece, just on a little wood background, and here it is in a little frame. If you wanted to kind of put it in a little frame, that would be really cute. Hey, I want to thank you so much for joining me in my studio. I have missed you all so, so very much, and I hope that you're all doing well through this global crisis that we're facing. Hopefully things will come back to normal soon. So thank you all so very much for joining me in my studio. Take care.